Good afternoon, everyone. I will call this meeting of the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee to order on this February the 17th. First up, do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, Jacqueline?
Yes, I'd like to announce I have an interest in 5.2A and 7A on the agenda.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you very much. I'll have you hand in your form there, the clerk, and thank you for that. Mr. Mayor is joining us. All right, I will move on to...
Sorry about that, should have been here.
It's okay, we just started a moment ago. I'll move on to 3A, ask for an approval of the agenda. Okay, it's George, seconded by the mayor. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 5.1 delegations. We will call on Mr. Moorhouse, owner of Eco-Mulch Farms, to address the committee with an update on the worm castings trial in the city planters. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we did our trial, Chris was here about just over a year ago talking about worm castings and that, and so I thought I'd give you up to date on how the trial went this summer with Quinte West, plus some of the other trials I did with planter programs. So just as a quick reminder and overview, the worm castings, we derive them from recycled food waste. We process them 100 million worms in Edmonton. We process them and produce a pure worm casting out of the product. Consistency of coffee grounds. And then from that we make a liquid and a granular extract. So it's using food waste to create a soil amendment that aids in food growth is kind of our complete circle that we like on it. The benefits, of course, worm castings enrich the soil, millions and millions of microbes, and up to 80% of the nutrients that plants absorb must be processed by microbe. No different than, a field of wheat. Wheat's not any good use to us. However, you get a mill and you grind it down to flour, suddenly it's a product that we can consume. Same thing for plants. Most soils are full of nutrients, just plants don't have the ability to absorb it. And so that's what we bring in. It brings in all these different products and allows them to absorb a higher efficiency use of the soils and the nutrients that are in the soil on it. This is just a base example of house plants. House plants, notoriously, they're watered, and that's about it, if that, for some people. And so we showed that, over the course of 3 weeks, once you introduce worm castings into the mix, the plants do very well because so that's the nutrients that is in the potting soil actually does benefit the plant at a much higher rate on it. Of course, on Maybe Road, I can't remember his last name. He starts 3 million tomato and pepper seedlings there, and just down the road from Garden Network. But he has been using the program, so he puts in all of his. So he does 3 million seedlings, and he puts 10% by volume of the worm castings, that raw worm castings, are blended into his soil, into his potting mixes. And then this past year, he started introducing a liquid program. So a 1% concentration every day when he watered. He added in the worm castings, and he had a significant improvement. Faster germination. There's this one type of Asian squash that's germination rate's only about 20 to 30%. It's about 60 to 70% when he uses the worm castings. He pre-soaks the seeds in it. So fast germination, less die-off, healthier, fuller plants. He was actually accused by a couple of competitors of using illegal growth hormones this year because his plants look too good for it. So that's just down the road. Another trial I did was on lawns, and this I've actually been chatting with Keeley about this, and actually Chris Angelo did a trial for me on his lawn this past year too. This is year 4 of the program. I actually reduced my fertilizer now 70% on my lawn. Now, yes, there is an irrigation system, but effectively only 3% of fertilizer is needed to maintain that very healthy lush lawn. Now, in this case, on most golf courses, we've been doing trials on about 50% reduction is what we're achieving, just because obviously a golf course is abused a lot more similar to a sports field than my front lawn. But yeah, so we are working that, and I've actually have been chatting with Keeley about a small trial with some fields in Quinte West as well to see about that. And reduced watering too is one thing we have found on the results, so you have better root growth. Tomato plug trial, spring 2025. This has won me an award at the Ottawa Valley Farm Show for most innovative product. So you can see the tray on the right, I guess, has worm castings, 10% by volume. The tray on the other doesn't. Everything else the exact same fertilizer plan, the exact same watering, light, everything. And that was day 18 after planting in plugs. And so you can see it just does lead to that significant growth improvement. You can even see on the tray when you lifted it up, the better root growth in those plugs. At the end, that's only day 18, which is still fairly quick after germination for these types of tomatoes. We also did the trial with grass. This is to show turf germination. And so what we did was just took straight topsoil. We took the same topsoil, added 5% worm castings, and then the same topsoil and added 10% worm castings into the blend. And as you can see, day 7, there's starting growth, and by day 14, the regular topsoil is just starting to show seeds. And you can see how healthy and vibrant the grass is with just even 5% castings. So what we established there was, yes, obviously there's an impact for castings, but we actually only needed less. We originally were working with 10%. We actually realized 5% gets either your effect, which of course reduced costs in the actual program, but you definitely get the results. And so that was one of our, obviously in an ideal growing situation in a greenhouse in the spring, but still in ideal conditions, you get a significant boost from the germination, growth and speed. One picture which I should put up there is the trays with the grass were almost root bound by that point in time. They're just, your 3-inch deep pie pans for this trial. Highly scientific. Planter trials. So in a conjunction with the city trial, what we did, I also did some trials with begonias at my yard. And what we're demonstrating there is you might see a benefit in increase, but the biggest thing I'm trying to show is without the fertilizer, with the worm castings, you actually achieve a healthy and a good looking plant. And there's nothing wrong with fertilizer. Fertilizer has a great role. What we're trying to demonstrate is that you don't need nearly as much to get that same effect. Now in this case, the worm castings did show, it looks slightly better in the picture, but for the most part, they are neck and neck when you used a full fertilizer program versus using a worm casting enhanced program with a significant reduction of fertilizer over the course of the season. One thing we did learn on these trials was the amount of worm castings that was being used traditionally on our original trials, and even the one with Quinte West, was about double of what's needed, because I actually used 50% of the worm castings that I originally planned and got the same. So much like that grass trial I just showed you, where 5% in the case of germinating grass seed on a quality topsoil was all that was needed versus a 10. Same thing for this. So that helps with cost effectiveness of the program moving forward. So this was just a demonstration. That's the overall. So obviously I had 9 planters with worm castings and then 9 with just fertilizer. And like I said, worm castings applied bi-weekly showed the best results of anything. Weekly application. The one thing, worm castings, we always add a biological stimulant. It wakes up the microbes. You can actually, too much of a good thing, you actually can stunt the growth in that situation. So we did learn you could do too much. Too much of a good thing is not always good. So we were able to dial that down. So the 5% was working in this situation. But as you can see across the board, for the most part, to the naked eye, you could not see difference whether you used full fertilizer or whether you used a full worm casting program, which is ultimately the objective we're trying to achieve. When I'm doing agriculture and crops, obviously you're still looking for a yield bump. When you're looking for plants and flowers, our goal is to match, because when you fertilize, you dump Miracle-Gro on weekly on a plant, it's going to look fabulous. It will look fabulous no matter what. So your only goal is to try to achieve to match it. And then the agriculture side, we obviously try to get a 5 to 10% yield bump, which we for the most part achieve on that side, which has the farmers excited. It's 5 to 10% yield bump good, Sir Mayor, for a crop? You like a 10% yield bump? So, September, this was a hanging basket. This is at my home, so this is just obviously petunias throughout the year, but you can see the sheer volume of root bound in that planter was crazy for that. And that was September 20th, that basket. So late season still looked fabulous, and it's petunias, which traditionally are more temperamental for moisture, especially being a dry summer. Obviously, they got water regularly, but there's no fertilizer in those mixes, just straight worm castings. And so the planters, so what we did this year was all of the planters in Frankfurt received worm castings. So it was a 50-50 split. So typically, once a week they got fertilizer, was the general program. Last year what Keely and I did was every other week they would get fertilizer, and then the in-between weeks, so every other alternating weeks, they would get worm castings. And simply the staff that were doing it would drive the pickup truck with the tank with water already in their tank to the yard, and we would just dump in the castings according to the formula that we had figured out, and then they would go and water them. So it kept it fairly efficient for them, and it was fairly seamless on that. And we basically found that the baskets didn't look any better, they didn't look any worse either, which is what we were achieving. And one of the things I did find too, like I said, was we probably could have decreased the worm castings by another 50% and achieve that result. In fact, this year I started talking about the idea of just going straight worm castings to achieve it, because it is, then you don't have any issue of any phosphorus dripping out, making its way into the waterways and that. But yeah, so overall for a trial, it did do quite well. One next slide here should show the notes. There you go. So there's no discernible difference between the Frankfurt and Trenton planters when we did do our analysis. Obviously, there's challenges, which Keelan agreed, not all summer students water the same standard. It was a dry summer. There was awfully a lot of heat, so that was a challenge, but that was a challenge for both in Trenton and Frankfurt. 50% reduction of synthetic fertilizer in Frankfurt. So the worm casting program, the biggest one, of course, is cost analysis too. The worm casting program would have cost more. However, it was not tightly controlled, and Keely's not 100% sure on the numbers that he had for the city side, because they seemed unusually low on his numbers. And mine, once again, I said I was high because we were using a much higher ratio than what I actually need. So I could actually reduce mine by 50% next year and still achieve. So it's a learning process. And like I said, for last year when I was donating, there's no cost to the city for the worm casting side of things. So it's simply an exercise of math just to see whether or not we came out in a financial analysis on it. And moving forward, we would look at that reduction would actually bring it closer in line. And Keely also this year wants to do tighter controls on the fertilizer, because like I said, last year his numbers were way too low, and he figures there is either some bags were missed or the application wasn't what it should have been. So on that. But overall, from both of our standpoints, the planters look good. And from my standpoint, we were able to achieve our goal, which was to show that we can have a positive effect in working in a live environment. Municipal environment, when you don't have a qualified person in the worm casting side, it's one thing if I do a trial, I will ensure it's done properly every time. It's another thing to get summer students to apply it and make sure it's done properly on it. So that was my quick and dirty summary, but more or less how it went last year. But like I said, we did see some encouraging numbers on it from last year, and I know Chris was happy with his. He did kind of an unofficial trial at his house on his lawn. He was pretty happy with that too. So, have any questions? Or?
Nice. Do we have any questions from the committee? George, go ahead.
So, on the trial at Frankfurt, the whole focus on the cost structure was education.
Yes. Yes.
So, I'm sure that students are going to be applying in Frankfurt again this year. So, what is the program to enhance that educational component in order to get the cost structures more aligned?
So one of the things that Keely's already been talking about is having dedicated people to do it. So it's the same person or the same pair of people who do it all summer. And then those, well, I don't know whether he's going to do one or two individuals, but those, let's say 2 individuals will actually we'll train with them at the beginning of the year to establish how to do it. And then it's the same as consistency. As long as it's the same person doing it, they'll do it consistent across the board. And that was one of the ideas that Keeley had out of it. And he's been talking about that before as well, just for the entire program itself, because he joked about a couple of years ago, he would actually fill jars of the fertilizer and then count them, because that's the only way he could make sure that students were actually dumping in the correct amount every time, was make it really simple. So he's hoping this year, by having one person who gets trained properly, 1 or 2 get trained properly, then that will alleviate that challenge.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a similar question that I have is, you talk about, 5%, 10%, but how do you know you're getting that amount on the complete area? Well, what kind of evaluation can you do other than visual to see? Like let's say I put triple 19 on 10 acres.
Yeah.
And I want to put 150 pounds. So I set the machine, I know what speed I'm going to travel, and I know the distance that my spreader will cover. But how do you know that? That's my question.
Which scenario are we talking? Agriculture?
It doesn't matter which one.
Well, it depends. Like agriculture, like for instance.
I'm talking about what you're doing, because what you're doing, in order to get it into any kind of use that the city has, it's got to be expanded.
Yeah. So like if you're talking about like on turf, for instance, turf, the granular worm castings we have granulized, you apply it at the same way as you would a synthetic fertilizer. So it's, let's say it's 50 pounds an acre, you'd set and you apply it at 50 pounds an acre. Like it's applied the same way as like in granular, it's the exact same way in liquid. It's a foliar, you apply it the exact same. If you want 4 liters per acre on foliar, that's what you put through. And the challenge with planters, of course, is the student might stand there for 10 seconds on one planter and 30 seconds on the other one. That's a variable that even synthetic fertilizer you have the same challenge with. They get more than they need or they don't get enough of what they need. So
I'm trying to cover a certain amount of ground.
Yep.
And if I do, I'm great, I'm really thankful. But when I'm buying it, I want to make sure I got enough to cover that amount of ground.
Yeah, so as long as I know in that situation of the ground, if I know it's 10 acres, 20 acres, whatever the area is, I know based on the application rate per acre what it needs to be. I can calculate out what volume you need for that.
Okay, so have you come down, come down to the price or the actual cost? I guess that's the question.
So, like in what what do you mean, like cost-wise? Well, it all depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on whether it's turf, a sports field. It depends whether it's used in planters. It changes based on what your application volume is. So in this situation, I've only been looking at planters. I haven't looked at anything beyond for the city. And our real challenge this year was, of course, the inconsistency with application, which isn't any fault of the student. That's, most students are like that. I was when I was their age. Pardon? Yeah, where everybody does it, right? So that was our challenge this year. But that's the challenge with plants is you don't have a harvest at the end of the year. You just have a visual what the plant looks like on it. But when I talk about using when I talk about when I do my trials at a 50% less worm castings got the effect I wanted, when I did my controlled trials in my yard, instead of putting on 1 liter per gallon of water per week to the plants, we would put half a liter of worm castings in per gallon and water all the plants equally across the board. So it's just the amount of concentrate we actually put into the mix to figure it out on that one.
So I'll work my way down here and then online and come back for secondary questions. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Yeah, I really liked your presentation, and I do like the results. I think this is very exciting. A couple of things came up to mind. I really like the comment you made about phosphorus and the potential reduction in that as a long-term scope, because as you're probably well aware, the surface water and the water table around Quinte west is phosphorus rich. And a lot of wells are quite shallow, including mine, and that's always been a standing concern. So I'm very excited about that. I wonder if you have any data or have given any thought to the effects this might have on brackish runoff areas like roadsides and improving the quality of roadside greenways as they occur in Quinte.
So we haven't done any trials on it, but I can tell you, if you're this simple, if you look at it, if we're reducing, let's say, fertilizer 50 by 50% that's going into those baskets, you will have less runoff, less phosphorus in the runoff. But we haven't moved too far into the talking about brackish water and that, investigating that. It's the main focus that we've been focusing on to this point in time has been the agriculture side, especially the cash crops and that, putting product in furrow and that. And our main focus on that, again, has been fertilizer reduction, improves root development, and improves health, and then obviously you get a benefit for the yield. In this, I'm the first one within the Annalita organization to kind of branch out and begin to look at planter programs and that. So I don't have much, unfortunately. I haven't looked too much into that aspect.
Yeah, the reason I'm curious is because a lot of agriculture in around Quinte does have a lot of roadside interface, and
Yes.
it does get brackish margins, particularly in the ditches. And I just think that would be something maybe taking back that would be something you can add to this that would be quite interesting and
Yes.
quite helpful.
Yes, yeah, no, for sure, certainly.
Randy, go ahead.
So far as the cost analysis, I'm just wondering, we were comparing how well the hanging pots did, I believe, with the worm castings compared to how well the pots did
Yes.
with artificial fertilizer. And I'm thinking that the people applying the fertilizer are no better, no worse, no matter which one they're applying. And there's probably about as many bad applications of the artificial stuff as there is of the stuff the worms produce.
Yes.
So it comes down to a matter, I think, basically of cost.
Yes.
If it's less expensive or equally expensive, certainly if it's even marginally more expensive for worm castings, my own feeling is that it would be a good way to go. But I'm just wondering, is there any way to meter the amount that the students are putting on? In other words, you squeeze the trigger, you get such and such a blast of water with the worm castings mixed in, and that's it, no more, no less.
We were brainstorming when we were spitballing ideas of having it so that each plant gets, like, say, a 10-second burst. So a student holds it, counts to 10. There's still some inconsistencies there, but it does, because that's the largest challenge that I've had as to what concentrations of worm castings to put into a tank is, well, how many planters does that one tank water? Because when I'm on the agriculture side, if you're doing corn in furrow, I know you need 4 liters per acre of product. You put in with your blend in with your starter. It's a simple, easy math. We know what we're doing. But when you're doing these trials, how much is each plant getting of water? Because if a plant's getting 2 liters of water, let's say, per application versus 1, obviously the amount of worm castings I need to put in is vastly different. It's a 50% change. And that's been my biggest challenge, the largest challenge, is figuring that out. And that it will allow us to bring the cost down to get it in line with what the fertilizer would be. But that's the learning curve, and that's why, when I came last year, and for me, it's the data I'm gathering from it is worth the investment of providing the worm castings free of charge to the city for this trial on it, is to see what can we hone in, because ideally, eventually I can figure it out. So I say, general rule, this is the application process. Here's the concentrations. If you have 200 baskets or 100 baskets, here's what you'd need for your yearly consumption on it.
I'm pretty sure it would be our equipment that we use for this. I was just wondering if there's some way to engineer this issue away. In other words, you squeeze the trigger and it sprays for 10 seconds and stops. You eliminate the human error.
I'm sure there is, but Matt.
Go ahead, Matt.
Through your chair card. Yes, I'm getting up to speed on this as we speak, but yeah, I will follow up with Keely and Jeff, and it sounds like we're proceeding with another year of trial and testing, and I'm sure we can come up with a little better way to measure and document and produce some more concrete data. Okay.
Councillor Sharp, go ahead.
Chair? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add to what committee member just said regarding a regulated application. And I want to also thank Jeff, Mr. Morehouse, for doing this trial and doing this program to assist us. But students change every year. We're a 7-day operation. I don't know if we can guarantee the same student application. So I really like what the committee member said and what Mr. Tracy will look into. If we can get some kind of, once we figure out how much of the product and regulate it that way, to have some, trust and trial data to add to what's been done and to give this some more time. But I don't think training one student or whatever will work, because we have so many and there's so much going on in the summer. But I think if we could look at that, how much is it? So anybody can do it and monitor it is the way to go. And I thank you, Jeff, for doing this trial. And I just wanted to add to the comments already made. Thank you.
And one of the things, too, we'll see a benefit is we're working off the worm casts, but you have a benefit to the city as a whole, even with the regular fertilizers, because there won't be wastage that way as well. So it'll be consistent, because currently there is, I'm sure, wastage on the regular fertilizer side, too, on it.
Right, there'll be by working with Keeley and Matt and creating a standardization process, right, you're right, exactly, whether it's worm castings or the fertilizer being applied, it will be, will benefit either way. Are there any other questions? Yeah, well, I thank you for the presentation, Jeff, and yeah, it sounds like that you and Keeley and Matt can continue the conversation, and sounds like from your photos there that product certainly works for the planters and this application usage. So if you're able to tighten down on the application process and bring back some data, and I would love to see cost versus cost, because as a committee member mentioned, with the less phosphorus leaching and other benefits, certainly I would think if the costs were in line or similar, that this could be something to look at in the future. But thank you very much.
Just one more question
Mr. Mayor,
before
go
you
ahead.
leave this. How long does the worm castings, do they stay in the soil?
Yeah, the microbes stay forever. They stay obviously for the year, but they in the winter even they go dormant. So it's a nice thing is the microbes you're putting in are there and they enhance the soil. You can get rid of them with chemicals. I mean, obviously, like anything else.
Okay, so I use them one year and I have a soil sample, I take a sample and have it tested. What's going to show up?
You'll have, so the microbial population will be higher. So you'll have a higher microbial.
But how do but do I know it's the right, I have the right distribution, or I guess that's what I'm.
Well, it's like I said, depends on the purpose, but there's the various situations we now know what our application rate is that will increase the microbial population. And one of the reasons I mentioned, like for my lawn, I said as year 4. The first couple of years, I saw a benefit, but it was marginal. It began to grow because as we slowly got the microbial population healthier, improved the soil health, earthworms have returned to my lawn now, which is one of the best indicators that you have a healthy soil. So it's slowly growing. So it's not a quick fix. It definitely does take time. But those microbes, once they're in the soil, they're in the soil. In the winter, they go dormant like any other living organisms in the soil. In the spring, as soon as it gets warm enough, they come alive again.
Okay, I'm trying to relate this to, like what I would do with, I keep a herd of cattle, so I spread manure.
Yep.
And I know that manure isn't going to do me much good the first year I put it on.
Yep.
But the second year and the third, it's going to stay there and it's going to build up, as you just said. And it's going to improve the quality of the soil and therefore, maximize the production of the crop that I want to grow.
Exactly, yes.
So, okay.
It is the exact same for the worm castings. It's anything biological. Putting manure on is your biological, your organic. Anything organic just takes time to build up.
Thank you.
Build that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 5.2 presentations, Ms. Jacqueline Miller. will address the chair and committee with information regarding a proposed Quinte BioBlitz for summer 2027. All right, go ahead whenever you're ready, Jacqueline.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be speaking to you today about something that's been a bit of a passion of mine for many years, and preceding this, my involvement with this committee. What is a BioBlitz? So, roughly in the mid-90s, Ontario was involved, as were several other provinces, with what was a movement to understand biodiversity locally and have an outreach program to connect this on a community basis to be more citizen science driven than specifically science driven. And the Ontario BioBlitz was one of the products of this. And it was a rotating effort that sampled through watersheds in Ontario with the idea that every 5 years one would go back and resample that watershed, and you would have a comparative database that you could see as things improving, declining, with the benefit of people becoming more aware of what's there and more invested in its protection and in other efforts to maintain biodiversity and green spaces in their community. Having a background at the Royal Ontario Museum, we were heavily involved in that. We have a very strong natural history department, and we've always, every one of the BioBlitzes, there were about 6 in a row that occurred before the program went defunct. We were all involved and contributed expertise ranging from birds, amphibians, plants, insects, in conjunction with many other governmental and non-governmental organizations and public outreach programs. So the idea is it's 24 hours that you invest in gathering information about anything, collecting anything, just to see what's out there. It's limited to 24 hours so that there's a standard period of time that can be compared, that is comparative as you go by year. And I've got a couple pictures there of some of the previous watersheds and where we sampled. And it's a really exciting opportunity. It had a great deal of grab in the community. So who would participate in this? Well, I mentioned certainly that there are governmental, non-governmental scientists, but there is also schools, churches, community organizations, scouts, guides, anyone in particular, even families coming out for a family day event. And it was structured in such a way that you could have kind of a discovery day if families wanted to, if people wanted to learn more about biodiversity but didn't necessarily feel equipped to participate. Or they could tag on with a scientist or with a naturalist assigned to, for instance, a taxonomic group, and actually get out there and learn how this is done, what tools we have, and how we go about measuring things. And it's a great opportunity, too, for students in the education system to get a little bit of community hours in if they want to utilize it for that reason. And yeah, it was very, very successful for the period of time that it ran. So basically there are 2 main goals. There's a scientific survey and there's a public education arm. So the scientific survey is geared to get real data that goes back in depositories, for instance at the Royal Ontario Museum or the Canadian Museum of Nature, that can be compared longitudinally across years to see are things changing, not just in terms of the biodiversity, but even with tools like genetic diversity, looking at bottlenecking. And this is becoming a very popular and point of interest in science is, are we increasing our genetic resources or are we decreasing our genetic resources, and how does this actually relate to the biodiversity that we see? That we have biodiversity doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy biodiversity, and this allows us a library going forward that we can make those kind of determinations and offer information to government bodies and beyond. From the public standpoint, again, we ran things from guided blitzes. So you would sign up for a group, you would tag along with a naturalist, say birds, and go out birding for the day, learn the kind of tools that we use, playbacks and visual observation and, and feeder watches and that sort of thing. And be able to hopefully take some of those tools back with you and even maybe garner an interest in pursuing a career somewhere down the road in that. There would also be, Trent obviously has a big fishing interest lobby interest. And that's something, too, that we don't have as much data as we optimally could in terms of things like minnows, forage fishes, and so forth. So it really is a way to increase knowledge, but increase knowledge for the public so they have a sense of responsibility and ownership of their green spaces in and around Quinte West. So this is just an example. This was from the Rouge National Urban Park. You probably all recall a number of years ago, the Rouge Valley Park was given a national identity and protected under Canada as opposed to just under the province. And here's some of the organizations that were involved with that. And really, these are ones that I would be considering tapping into going forward. Doesn't matter that they're directly involved with Quinte. They have an interest in Ontario biodiversity and have had and historically have had an interest in these kind of efforts. And this is just kind of an example of some of the information booths. So it's a win-win situation. Even if you don't have a lot of people grasping at an event that could offer them avenues to learn more about biodiversity or contributing to data, you have an arena that can become an event that can become a nature fair where people can come in, like with Nature Canada here, and discover, what's out there, what organizations, what kind of volunteer opportunities, and just, what Canada does and what Ontario does and municipalities to contribute to our natural heritage. So how is it organized? Well, I think I've pretty much said that you tap into resources that are already there in terms of organizations, and you have a committed central committee. One of that would be, of course, me. I would be volunteering for this, and would be looking for folks from this committee to be sitting on, and perhaps someone from municipal council to be involved as a conduit, the public library, and anyone really that has an interest in this kind of enterprise. And that, I would suggest, would be something that would be developed over the first 3 months. I'm suggesting this for 2027, the summer of. So the first 3 months would be establishing an organized committee to look at logistics, feasibility, and so forth. And then the following 6 months would be the public outreach and the push to see if we can get participants. And then rolling out, the last 3 months would be rolling out the actual BioBlitz. Typically, we would do this in June. We try to have historically have tried to avoid things like migration periods or nesting periods, with bats. One of the big problems we had with earlier blitzes was maternity roosting and so forth. So usually it's June. Sometimes we've had some later in the summer, but it's really open to discussion about what best fits the municipal calendar, what best fits the education calendar, and individual participants. And the areas to be selected. There are a lot of green spaces in the Trent watershed. And there are a lot of green spaces that are strictly municipal and some that fall under provincial or even Government of Canada jurisdiction in terms of parks and other protected areas. So it really depends on what scope the committee I'm suggesting or the organizing group I'm suggesting would put forward. But you could start with local green spaces within the city. There are an awful lot of marshlands in and around Quinte that are actually defunct monitoring sites for the marsh monitoring program that would benefit from the opportunity to do a little bit of survey and see how they compare to previous years. So there is data on some of these areas already in Quinte. And in terms of A host facility, well, that's kind of the ask. What you really need is a physical space where you can set up tables, set up stations, microscopes, and so forth. We've dealt with this at the museum with donation, lending our microscopes and so on. Quinte Museum has some capacity in that regard and certainly has some interest. And, looking at opening up a pavilion in a park area would be one possibility, and just having it as the center where people could come to bring their information that they gather, and then people that would be volunteering to log that data, and even perhaps allowing participants to assist in that and learn how data is logged and how it's tracked over time. So things like a campsite, it is a 24-hour proposal, so it would be overnight, and in some cases you want that because some surveys are early morning, some surveys like nocturnal animals are nighttime, and so you'd be looking at a parking area, a campsite, washrooms, that kind of infrastructure. But I do feel very strongly that this can be done on predominantly a grassroots, with grassroots support. And with advanced planning, I think certainly with support of, if we can bring this to council, with endorsement by council, we could certainly, I would anticipate there would be lots of interest in local funding and participation. So this is the watershed area. I'm not saying that we're going to do the whole thing, but certainly it's something we could look at. If it does prove to have traction with the public, we could look at rotating through this area just as the BioBlitz rotated through watersheds in Ontario in a larger proposal. So that would be really vital information. There are a lot of migratory pathways that come through Quinte and Lower Hastings, and I think that's something that has a lot of potential for the community. So here are just some example sites. I actually already attend a couple of these. I do marsh monitoring on Teal Pond and Frog Pond. But there are lots of other sites. And it doesn't have to be large, and it doesn't have to be, an hour-by-hour commitment. You can commit as much as you want or as little as you want or not at all, and just tag along to observe and have a good day out with your family with a butterfly net. So it's a great way to get a family-based and community-based activity that can carry over into subsequent years and become kind of a landmark feature of the Quinte conservation community. I think I've spoken enough about taxon leads and where they might come from. Sampling can be anything from photographs to acoustic sampling to actual collection of specimens that get deposited in natural history collections in Ontario. And a lot of the equipment, it comes from those institutions that we already have equipment, and historically there's never been a problem with an ask for loaning equipment to get this kind of thing underway. So what kind of levels do you have? You have an intense blitz, which is more scientific. Then you would have a guided blitz where people could sign on to a list that would be on the media outreach. So we'd have a list: who wants to go birding, who wants to go mammal watching, who wants to go fishing, and be tagged on with an expert or a naturalist in that area. And then there's casual, drop in by, as I said, by a tent or a mobile information booth and just learn a little bit about what's going on, participate in a casual walk. Lots of opportunities, and we've had traditionally all three of these with the BioBlitzes that happened in the past. So here are just some of the highlights of previous BioBlitzes. Rouge Park, we had over 225 participants. Humber Watershed, over 500, and over 1,500 species identified. And again, Rouge was the Rouge Park, as you can see, had the first year, 2012. That was kind of the inauguration of this program. 2013, we repeated that, and 5 years later, we went back to Rouge and actually had data to compare and did see an increase in the identified number of species. So again, just sort of some of the representative numbers that we had, and a lot of things that people might not aware are part of their natural heritage in their local backyard. So that's basically my pitch, and I'm look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And of course, because of your declaration, you won't participate in the debate or vote, but we'll stay on that side of the podium and can answer some questions. And yeah, I guess we'll. I don't know if we want to. I guess yeah. If there's questions about the presentation, we'll do those now and then move through to 6 and 7 on the agenda. So, if there are any questions about the, I'll go to Councillor Sharp online. Go ahead.
And thank you for your presentation. As I look at this, I think it's very exciting. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about terms maybe a host location, the Frankfurt Tourist Park, which has camping, water. It's actually partially on Parks Canada property, including our property. So I don't know if there's some investment from Parks Canada with this. I also wanted to point out Oak Lake is not far. Also Ottawa with its parks and opportunity in the hall if there was, weather issues, but we do have the pavilion. And I do think we're close to Sager's Conservation Trail, the walkways. I like your idea of the museum, Lower Trent Conservation, Quinte Conservation, any of our youth groups. So I think this is very interesting. And I was just looking at kind of the rural community, maybe potentially having some host space. And I thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I've thought about some of these areas too. I thought about the Frankfurt Water Park. I think that's a great location. It's quite central. I'm mute? Am I now? Okay, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And these are ways too that these are resources we can tap into that reduce any kind of fiscal ask we ask of anyone if there's already infrastructure that we can just be creative and utilize as a resource going forward with this. Yeah, I think that's, thank you for your suggestion.
Councillor O'Neill, go ahead.
Thank you. I too like the idea, and I recently discovered on our phones we can take a picture of something and it'll describe what type of bird it is or what type of reptile it is. So we have technology available to help with these species counts and everything else.
Yeah, that's actually a good point too. There's iNaturalist, there's Merlin, there's a number of platforms, and a lot of these platforms log that data as well. So there's great ways that you can do some public outreach. Some folks might remember a few years back when I first joined this committee, I did the February bird count, and that was fairly well received. And that data was contributed to Birds Canada via their Merlin app as well. So yeah, I think that's a great tool, and we can have a little workshop. You have workshops ahead of time that introduce people to these tools and let them know how to use them. So that's part and parcel with this as well.
Vice Chair McHugh, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Jacqueline, great presentation. This reminds me a lot of when I was a youngster, school trips. We'd always go out and do this. You catch a butterfly or look around and see what was there. And I didn't realize till after I read this with the wife here the other night that I've been getting a Bio Blitz presentation every day. My wife has the Merlin, but for years, any flora or fauna, she's outside. She knows what animals were fortunate living in the country. And every day I get a report of what's been there, what's not there. She records in her book, and she can tell you when last that certain animal was seen there, or the last time a certain duck was there. Or something. She walks the waterway and finds different things there as well and that. But I know she'd be bang on to help with this. But again, I'm thinking of a location, maybe it's something that could be tied in with a national or some type of quasi-national school day, and then you could use the schools as a location to funnel all the information to at the end of the day. You get the youngsters out there learning it. I think it's great that people should learn what's in the backyard. You shouldn't go out the front door with the blinders on, go to work, come home and not pay attention. It's nature. And I think it's great. It's right in your own backyard classroom.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And one thing I will say that may not have been that clear in the presentation is. One of the things that's come out of this is logging of endangered species or new species observation species that includes not just good species, but invasive species. And that is important data to have as well. So yeah, there's a phenomenal latitude that can be tapped in from this kind of initiative. It just really takes a lot of creativity and some leadership to go forward. But
Randy, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I especially like the community building aspect of this, having groups all over the watershed getting together and doing something productive and useful. And I'm wondering too, if I understand the structure of this right, you'd have a subject matter expert, I believe, with each group. Is that more or less the idea?
You have kind of three tiers. Yes, you'd have a subject expert, and you could sign up to tag along and participate in data collection. Then you have a more intensive component where you might have, say, someone that has an expert that has a particular interest in, say, for instance, one of my colleagues at the ROM is a bat specialist. He has a vested interest in looking at the dynamics of our endangered bat species. So he might be doing something a little more intensive and that also, unfortunately, is at nighttime for that kind of thing, but also very casual kind of walks that would be more family, youngster friendly, where you wouldn't be obligated to have to really do or gather anything, but could just learn about something and just have a kind of a guided tour through an area to have someone point out some things you might not know. So all three of these were elements in the BioBlitz.
Because where I was going with that was, I'm sure schools still have biology teachers, and I'm just wondering if we could appeal to the schools, excuse me, I was kind of swollen, appeal to the schools and see if the biology teachers in each of those high schools or public schools were interested in this, and if they could get a little group of students to go out on whatever day the BioBlitz would be and get them involved in that and reporting back.
Certainly one of my hopes.
George, go ahead.
Great presentation, Jackie, as always. I just want you to clarify, though, what the expectation is from the City of Quinte West as far as what's required. I think that's really important so that we're all extremely clear.
Yes. Well, I understand that fiscal asks are difficult and budgets are tight on all fronts. And this isn't really so much it's not a monetary ask. I'm looking for a commitment from municipal council, should they approve of this, to be able to say that, they're behind the BioBlitz, so that when we go forward and do our outreach to other organizations, that there's a hub already there that people can connect with. It would be up to the municipal council if there's anything further that they could contribute. But things I'm looking at is like, park space in the municipality, parking space, approvals to utilize that for the 24-hour period without cost, for instance, parking for participants, use of the library, use of any information conduits that we can tap into to spread the word about this well in advance. So more logistical support than anything else. And then perhaps, I don't know what we have in terms of property, if we have things like benches and that in store somewhere, just practical things like that if they come along. But that's where I would like to have someone from council also involved in the steering committee so that we can determine if there's anything that's available that would be, would contribute to this and not burden the city fiscally.
And just to build on that a little bit, because when you did the presentation to the working group, I know it was mentioned that a city staff member sitting on the committee that was formed with the different organizations, which you hope to, you would lead presumably, and then, ask for a representative from the conservation agencies, et cetera. And I think that, just as a suggestion, I think that a staff member probably makes more sense with Director Tracy speaking with Director Grimman. I guess maybe if it crosses over a couple of different groups, but I would recommend that would probably be more fruitful than a member of council. But I can let Director Tracy speak to that briefly.
Yeah, through your chair card, if council chooses to support this initiative, I think between myself and Director Grimman, we can probably find a staff member to participate in the working group. And from that, I believe there's opportunity for some in-kind services such as facilities, parking lots, maybe some chairs, tables, and that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. Was there, yes, Vice Chair McHugh.
Yeah, thank you. Just in reference to George's concerns as well, basically you're just looking for this committee to recommend to council to approve in principle the idea for this BioBlitz proposal. If you get that then we would flesh it out. Maybe other members of the public that might come forward as well, just on different committees to get the ball rolling. So you're not asking for any real commitment other than approval in principle to the idea. We like the idea, and then we go forward from there.
Correct, yes, but it would also be helpful if I can say that I represent the Environmental Stewardship Committee as part of this steering group when I go and reach out to, say, Parks Canada or what have you, and that it's not just strictly private citizen, which never has as much weight. So yes, endorsement in principle, and then depending on the progress of the steering committee, in endorsement in the public eye using the municipal icon on communications, that sort of thing, just like I showed where we had all of everyone's emblems on display. We actually had that on our T-shirts. We had a T-shirt made for each BioBlitz. In the back of the T-shirt, the friend identified who you were, naturalist, BioBlitzer, or just observer. And on the back, it had all the logos of all the organizations that were participating. And in many cases, it was just endorsement in principle that they were putting, getting their name out there as being in support of a better growing understanding of biodiversity and how it impacts our communities.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, in light of this, I would like to move a motion to support in principle and ask for a staff report to document resources required from the committee, staff contribution to go to council. So council has an understanding of, the facilities, the parks, the resources, the library, and so forth. So it is a clear understanding to move this forward in principle, but also acknowledge the investment of the city and support the volunteer component. That would be my motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for this, Randy? Okay. I guess we'll have the conversation now. Is there any, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I just don't know. I'd have to ask Councillor Sharp, what's the purpose? Where are you heading? That's what I would ask.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting it, but we need to understand how much staff time, what's the date, are the facilities available, the park investment, the staff investment. It's really just so we all understand what is the city's commitment. That's really the intent of the motion, but I'm certainly open for change. But I really want to support the initiative, but I think it's fair to say what is the overall ask. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot in here.
I understand.
It's so broad, and you talk about and of course, I guess I'm looking at it and I have no idea what schools do today, whether I know to take children out on field trips and so on, as long as everything is sort of semi-confined, they can do it, but once it gets out into into the private property business, then you've got to be very careful and make sure that every student understands that you know, all you leave is a footprint and that's it. You don't destroy anything, you don't disturb anything, you look and gather, but you don't touch, you know, you've got, like I can see 100,000 field trips in any of these things. You know, you talk about mammals. You know, where do we go? Go out into a field someplace and walk through the woods and walk through the environment and see what we see. And day 1 we see 2, day 5 we see 10, and so on. And our responsibility is to try to determine what they are, and then the teacher will take it even further as to the environment, where they live, what they eat, and how far do they travel in a day, and what's the. So you know, there's a lot in this. I mean, amphibians and fish, and then insects are multiple. Yeah, yeah. Like I just don't know what we could do as a council. How we can. Anyways, I'll go ahead. I think Director Tracy's got.
Sure, Director Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, through you. No, I think the recommendation for a brief staff report will give me the opportunity to speak with Director Grimman. I think, like from what I'm hearing, this isn't a city-run event. This is a city-supported event. There'll be all the definitions, the legalities. We can flush all that out early. There'll be coordination with other events, so that way make sure space is available. I think there's opportunity, to push advertising that through our social media and those channels. So I think a staff report would be appropriate, and it would be pretty easy to bring back.
Okay, Mr. Henning.
Yes, Mr. Chair. If I understand it right, and what your ask today was for an approval in principle of this would be a good way for us to go. And basically, you also talked about, as you go out and talk to different agencies and such, you asked for permission to say you're from the City of Quinte West Environmental Committee as opposed to just yourself. And I don't know that there should be, I don't see any of those things as really that binding on anyone. And would it be possible then for us to come back at even the next, this thing isn't until, not this coming summer, but the following summer. We have time to, I think, go away and come up with a better list of what the ask or the requirement from the city might be in the meantime. Is that likely?
Well, I think that the staff report would be appropriate in the sense that the directors can speak with Jacqueline, and I think further flesh out and try to nail down some of these details, which would allow a committee to be formed going forward potentially. But the staff report would come back to council. Director Tracy, I can't imagine it would be how long would it take you to bring back that staff report? I can't imagine too long.
No, I don't think that'll be probably a month.
Okay, so we can have council.
Unless you wanted to come back to this committee, but committee first, but timing's probably better to go to council.
I would tend to agree with that, just based on the timing and when the next meeting could be. That could end up not getting to council until the mid-late summer or something, depending on timing. So I think going to council, I think Councillor Sharp's motion, that makes sense, I think. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we have the motion on the table. All in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to public input now. Seeing none, we will move on, and since we've essentially dealt with 7A, so there are no other subcommittee or working group items, so we will continue to 7B and hand over to Director Tracy, who will provide a verbal update regarding the city's continued involvement as a B-City community.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just an update. We did renew our B-City designation earlier this year. Part of that, with myself being new to the B-City initiative, we had some training, had 4 other staff trained and brought up to speed on the annual reporting requirements and the overall general program. And I think we've, talking internally, may have found some opportunities to for some of our capital projects, possibly the trail project, and along the trunk sewer project, some of our restoration efforts could probably be, we're going to look into using the pollinator type plants for some of those restoration areas. So.
Great news. And if I have it correct, that the our intention is to continue updating that designation every year. Great. It's good to know. All right, moving on to number 7C now. Would you like to speak on the trash bash?
Yeah, through you, I do not have a lot to update other than trash bash is intended to continue, and staff are just working currently with the working group of other municipalities, and at this point I don't have anything further. They're setting up those meetings, and we'll be able to report back with the dates and all the communication material at a later time.
And did you have anything else on the, I guess there's information in the agenda package for the spring giveaway days and the new waste management calendar. Did you have any comments, or did the committee have any? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can carry on down the list here. So the waste standardization program, I did get an update from Mr. Beamer that's been working on that. We have ordered some of the, just pulling up that. He's proceeded and ordered the new bins. The bins that we have upstairs, he advised that they're not ideal for forward-facing, public-facing locations. So we've proceeded to order those bins. Some of the initiatives at the arenas, there's some further work needs to be done for storage areas for the material. But that is in progress, and we'll be moving forward with that shortly. The Environmental Stewardship Awards, talking with our communication staff, we're intending to open up the nominations beginning March 2nd through till April 24th, and then with the intent to bring the applications back through this committee and for a selection process. I think in discussions, I think we're just going to open it up for awards in general. We're not going to try and facilitate different areas. It's just we're going to offer, I think, 3 awards, same as last year, but they're not specific to any sector. It'd be a selection process by the committee for the most appropriate or best applications.
All right, thank you for that. And do we have any questions regarding, Randy, go ahead.
Just a question. I believe last year we talked about having 3 categories this year, which would be individual, business, and organization. Just looking at it before I came today, we seem to have one for business and one for individual, but I didn't see the organization. Is your intent to have an organization award as well?
Through you, Chair. My understanding, and again, I'm still coming up to speed on this, but I think we didn't have enough intake last year to award to each sector.
Yes.
So that's the suggestion was, let's just open it up, and we'll provide 3 awards to the best suited.
Yeah.
And that, again, that would be up to the committee to vet each of the applications. So
Yeah.
I'm open. If you want to leave it as to each sector, that is fine as well.
The reason we had divided those into different categories, we realized it made it more complex in one sense, but it's pretty hard to compare apples and oranges. Lucy, for example, who got the individual award last year, picks up garbage as she jogs, and it's pretty hard to compare someone like that to a business that sells nursery trees, native species, and it's 2 different things altogether. There's also organizations out there, for example, I know one, without letting a cat out of the bag, that encourages its members to give away things that they have and don't need anymore, sometimes quite valuable, in return for they're able to ask for things that other people, so there's a whole list of things that aren't getting in the landfill that are going to someone else and benefiting them. So I personally myself, I feel it could be important to keep at least 2 categories, and actually I think 3 would be more appropriate. I'll leave that for discussion, but.
Jacqueline, go ahead.
Yes, I kind of agree with Randy because at least to the level of individual versus industrial, they're quite separate entities, and it also kind of deters an individual or recommendation stepping forward if they feel they're not going to be able to outcompete something much larger. So I think those 2 distinctions are core and quite important, but I think we do have some flexibility around what that represents.
Through you, Chair, in terms of that, like we plan for 3 awards, so if we want to leave it, the application same as last year, if there wasn't an application that fit one of the segments, then the committee could choose to, maybe there's 2 fantastic applications as individuals, so the committee can choose to award accordingly.
So, if I understand you, Director Tracy, then when the nomination period opens, there will be the opportunity to make nominations in those 3 categories: organization, business, and individual. And if for whatever reason there weren't nominations in some of the categories and the committee chose, as they see fit, to award possibly 2 awards from one category, because maybe one category didn't receive any nominations, they would have that option.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, fair enough. So I think that we're all on the same page then, as long as if there's going to be the opportunity to apply for all 3 categories separately, as you're saying. Go ahead, Randy.
Sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but I do think it's important that we ask for nominations in the 3 categories, because the public needs to know, and there's some quite specific requirements for each category, so the public needs to know what they're nominating the person for, so they can properly support it. We had some very good nominations in 2 categories last year, and it worked out very well. So if we could stick with that plan, it would be great.
Absolutely, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good. Were there any questions online or comments online? No, we're okay?
Just one
No,
comment.
Mr. Chair, okay. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. I was just going to support what the chair, Councillor Card, has said, and committee members, that we have the 3 as we have in the past, and leave it to the committee to determine as the applications come in, but the same process will apply as the chair has indicated and members. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think we should be looking at, and I think I suggested this last year, is we have nothing in here that represents or even considers the farmer. And which is, I guess, fine, but I think we have a very large section of our city is a rural component, and we have great people working with cattle, working with a variety of animals, the water buffalo and so on, and do we recognize any of their achievements, or is that something that we're going to continue to overlook?
No, I think that's a very reasonable point, and I'll take comments in a moment from the committee, but Director Tracy, do you think that it would be possible for you to make the suggestion to whoever this lives with, the comms team, to if the committee so supports it, to include farms in one of whatever we decide? I guess either the organization, I guess, probably makes sense, or business, I guess, if it's a for-profit farming operation. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Through your chair, yes, no, that sounds reasonable. I don't think the nature of this was to exclude any farming initiatives, but it definitely can be looked at and maybe advertised as such.
Yeah, added to the categories, organization, / farm, that sort of thing. I'll go to Randy and then George.
As a matter of fact, you could say that one of our recipients last year was a farmer. She raises nursery stock on her farm and encourages people to use organic methods of farming and organic methods of and indigenous species when they plant the things that she sells to them. So I suppose you could say she was a farmer, and we certainly didn't intend to exclude farmers. I do wonder, though, if there could be some wording in when we do the promotional stuff for this, when we list the types of things that might be included under business, if you want, as and to make sure we mention farming, because yes, by all means, we certainly need to say attaboy to the folks that are doing a good job out there, which my impression is that most all of them are.
Go ahead.
Just one further comment, and Randy's absolutely correct. You know, if a farmer used to milk a cow in a pail, remember those days? In a pail? Yeah, right. Today, one cow is producing 154 pounds of milk per day. Yeah, that pail's gonna be, yeah. And all I'm saying is that, you know, we have a large component in this city, and I just think it's important that we, and maybe it's just the wording. Maybe that's enough.
Okay, George?
I agree with the mayor. I think it is in the wording that we've got to enhance that, and Director Tracy's indicated that that'll be an important part of that communication when it initially goes out. So I think if we can, but it's got to be spelled out specifically so that they feel included.
Absolutely, and then it's clear that nominations can come in for the farms as well. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
And I think adding to that, it would not be difficult to word in such a way that the potential applicant or the nomination is reflecting the core principles. I mean, that's the key thing here, is not so much that you're representing an industry of any particular kind, but that you're nominating on the basis of the principles of that award. So as long as that is in the wording, I think there's no problem with that.
Great. All right then, so I will entertain a motion to receive the verbal updates. Moved by Vice Chair McHugh and Mr. Brown, all in favor.
I got one.
It's carried.
Maybe it's under new business.
All right, we are,
New business.
yeah, we're just at 8 now, so we'll be there next. So we have, yes, can I get a motion to accept the correspondence and printed information? Or if we have any questions, I can deal with those first. Councillor McHugh, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor O'Neill, rather, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's regarding the Quinte Waste Management Calendar. I've received a lot of positive comments on this. I think it's great they know where they can go to do something, the dates for collections when they change. I have one question, though. When we had the facility on West Street, people could get rid of large quantities of, let's say, paper or styrofoam. And I thought I was told that Quinte West was going to try and set up a facility for people to get rid of these large amounts. Has that been set up yet, or is someone working on that?
Through you, Chair, no, that has not been set up yet. We are working with our contractors to understand whether they can provide a facility, or we're looking at options for ourselves. So that falls on my plate currently. So that is in the works, and I agree that it is a good to have facility.
Thank you.
Yes, to echo Councillor O'Neill's comments, I've also heard great things, and the putting the information about the pickup days on there when holidays are involved on the calendar, I thought was an excellent touch. Yeah, great information. Glad to see that so well received in the community. So are there any other comments on any of the other correspondence or printed information? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to, okay, Mr. Brown?
I do have a question on the Bay of Quinte Remedial Action Plan meeting. And what I didn't understand in the information that was provided was on the percentages of what are the major contributors. Is it rural or is it the urban point? And what is the major contributor in that jurisdiction for phosphorus?
Let Director Tracy take that.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I guess everybody's well aware of the Bay of Quinte Remedial Action Plan, the area of concern, and the minutes of the Remedial Action Plan meeting reflect the ongoing trying to delist the Bay of Quinte. And they've been a number of the number of the different reports have been received, so the number are getting down. In terms of the phosphorus management plan, that is a long-term target. And I apologize, I don't have the exact split, but in there you did pick up, you noted that in the long-term plan, point source loading coming from municipal water or wastewater facilities is one that is a significant concern. They've identified reducing that number twofold. I think it's easy to pick on the municipalities because we're heavily regulated, so it's an easy one to impose legislation and change. But I am happy to note that our phosphorus, it's 0.1 milligrams per liter, is the future target coming from treatment plants. We're currently at 0.3 is our regulatory level, and generally speaking, we're consistently below that 0.1 in a lot of cases. So the impacts of this is not maybe significant on the end product. The impacts will be, though, we'll have to address on the engineering side and the design of future upgrades in order to have the design capable of meeting that in the future. But when that happens, again, this is the Bay of Quinte RAP program's been going on, I think, since 1993. So it'll be, I expect to be a long phase-in process as well.
Just briefly, Director Tracy, and I apologize asking you this without forewarning, you might not know, but in terms of the phosphorus management plan or any of the similar plans that the committee deals with, are there any teeth, so to speak, or any enforcement mechanism on the back end? Or I guess what happens in 5 years if to say that the phosphorus management plan, that those levels, the KPIs are not reached? Does the province have some sort of stick that they wield on that, or are these just sort of aspirational, but there's no real enforcement on the back end, or how does that work, if you do know?
Well, currently they're targets, but if this does get implemented for the point source loadings, if the province accept these and they become regulatory, then it's the Ministry of Environment that would have the power to force things to be done. So we get inspected about once every 3 years on the wastewater side. So if this becomes part of regulation, then it becomes enforceable.
Great. Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Well, that's an interesting point. And how do we, and who's going to be the, I guess, the overseer that's going to check on what's going on? Take Oak Lake, for instance, take that particular piece of water. And we know that we've been out there and encouraged cottagers to look after their wastewater, look after their systems, and make sure their systems are built according to the regulations and they function according to the regulation. But we've got, I don't know how many kilometers of shoreline where we have cottages and houses. And are we sure, or who's going to inspect that, and then who's going to enforce it? That's the part that becomes very difficult. But I did want to read today, I guess, Mark Cullen, and many of you would know Mark Cullen, I hope. He's been a great supporter of this city. And we have planted many trees, that he's donated to us. So, which is even better because the price is right, you know. And we planted a number along by the air base on number 2 highway. And what he's saying to me today is that, you know, the charity sector in Canada has experienced a crisis of competence in recent years. Public trust has dropped from 57 to 35% in Canadian charities, and donors are moving away from supporting good intentions towards supporting expert execution. And he wants to address that, and he's saying, our honorary patrons, Sharon and David Johnson, the former Governor General of Canada, know something about trust. David wrote a remarkable book titled Trust, and 20 Ways to Build a Better Community in 2018. And he goes on to tell us, but he is, what he's ultimately doing is encouraging us as a municipality to keep taking part in the planting of trees. That, you know, and he's saying how important trees are to our environment, how important they are to the beautification of our city, and so on. So it's a lot longer, but that's basically what he's saying. And Director Angelo and I have maintained this relationship because we feel it's really important, very important, and we get good quality trees. In fact, we are the city that planted the trees along the Highway of Heroes, right from here to Parliament Buildings in Toronto. So, yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted you to know that we are being recognized. Yes, there are things we need to continue to do, and we will do that. Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion then, if there are no more questions, to receive the correspondence and printed information. Okay, Vice Chair McHugh and Mr. Brown, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. On to number 9, new or other business. I will start over here with Randy.
Not a lot, except from a person who lives in Quinte West point of view. We talked about garbage collection and so on earlier, and there was a survey done just recently that apparently a number of people were not happy with it. And we've been nothing but happy with the new arrangement. They come on time. They don't generally throw things all around. They're courteous. We've done our part in a little bit. We have a large compost bag now that we put in our compost bin that saves them having to dig through it. But for the most part, it's if you're diligent with sorting out your recycling and making sure it's clean, everything goes. And as far as I'm concerned, they're doing a fine job. That's really all I have.
Jacqueline?
Oh, I don't have anything new. I think I've spoken enough today, but I will add on to that. I'm very pleased with the new pickup, to even the point of leaving me notes when something isn't picked up because I goofed and it wasn't the appropriate thing. That's kind of a very personal little touch, but I think they're doing a really good job, in my opinion, and nothing else to add.
And to the mayor's point before about relationships and the staff work, I know that former director Angelo, that was always a close relationship of his with our service providers for waste and recycling, and always working with those folks to make sure the service at the highest level for the community, dealing with any issues. Certainly always been on top of that, and we reap the rewards for that, certainly. Going this way, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Vice Chair McHugh.
Yes, I have what you may consider a crazy little idea, and I've thought of this since I was a child, but anyhow, let's go, give me a minute, bear with me, go back pre-1850. Now, we're talking about phosphates in our water, we're talking about invasive species, we're talking about different populations of fish coming in and taking over. And prior to 1850, Mother Nature designed the river to come roaring down, hit the Bay of Quinte, make an immediate left-hand turn, and disappear and take everything with it. During that period of time, or during that pre-1850s, boats would come from Kingston and come from Belleville to go to 12 o'clock point. Why? It was the Coney Island of Ontario. It was all sand beaches. There were sand beaches in Belleville. But what happened? Late 1850s, we dug the Murray Canal. So now the water comes roaring down, hits the Bay of Quinte and go blah. It doesn't have to make a left-hand turn. It drops sediment. Sediment, of course, absorbs the phosphorus, so things are going on. Certain types of fish can invasive species or otherwise, fish can now travel in and out of Lake Ontario, get here quicker, coming in here. So as crazy as this idea is, I'm going to put it out there, I've often said we need a set of locks at this end of the canal. You close it in the fall. What happens is the water comes roaring down the spring, has nowhere to go but make a left-hand turn. Clean out the invasive species, clean up the shoreline, clean up the weeds, take some of this excess phosphorus or whatever phosphorus, and I'm not saying we don't keep on track to lower phosphorus, but takes it out. At the same time, while that is closed, the Murray Canal will freeze. You want to have the longest skating rink in the world, or curling rinks, or motorcycle races, or skidoo races, whatever, you would have a Coney Island again, 12 o'clock point would be sand beaches, and in the wintertime, the Murray Canal would be a frozen playground. That's all I want to say. It costs millions of dollars, I know, but put Mother Nature back. Mother Nature worked beautifully for the Bay of Quinte, the waters, and all the species that were here until we put the Murray Canal in, and we changed the face of Mother Nature, and we've been fighting ever since, the Reed Act Group, to get the bay back the way it was. And a simple thing like, I think, a lock in that end would force the water, it would take a few years, but there, I've said my piece. I've often praised that idea. I know.
George, go ahead.
This question's for Director Tracy, and you may not know the answer. I was doing some work recently, and I saw there's a change for on Regulation 406-19 that comes into effect January 1st, 2027, where there's a ban on landfilling certain soils. And I wasn't sure whether there's any impact on the city of Quinte West, but I wanted to at least ask while we have time to think about it. And you may know it, and if you don't, I fully understand.
Through your chair, yes, that we've just had some training on that, an update. The intent is excess soil, the excess soil regulation. We comply with that now. We do sampling and testing in soil before we remove it. And essentially the goal is to find beneficial use of the soil in other places. There's been a trend and that's why they're banning it. It's been too easy on too many occasions where soils that may have some level of contaminant, it's just the easy button to send it to landfill. But there are soils that are contaminated that need to be properly treated and possibly landfilled, but there's lots of soils that might just be impacted by salt. There's soils that have got other low-level contaminants, a lot of things that can be reused in industrial areas for fill. A lot of the soils we pull out of the road, and for lack of a better place to put them, they get shipped off-site, but it's about being smarter with how you use them. Know what's in them, and then if you can reuse it back in the road base, by all means, put it back where it came from. So yeah, it does impact the city, but we generally speaking aren't taking soils to landfill unless we absolutely had to. So a lot of our industrial park development and that has been reusing soils from our other construction projects.
All right, I'll go to Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Sharp online. Anything for new business?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to also congratulate all the staff team and the committee and those involved in the calendar. I think it started from this committee, Councillor, Mr. Chair. But I also want to say for anyone who is listening and for the committee members, the distribution and marketing the calendar is going to get a little more attention in the rural areas. Many didn't get a calendar or are not aware of the calendar, and staff are working hard on that. And just want everyone to know that, and it's an amazing calendar. I well, I use it already and I'm thankful for it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And yes, Vice Chair McHugh's idea. I'm not even sure who the body would be to take that to, if that would be MNR or who that would be. But I like the idea. I like the lock idea. We'll take that up next meeting maybe. Okay. So we're at the yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I know Councilor McHugh is serious, but, from my point of view as mayor, we can't even get the federal government to improve the canal bridge. I know. Which is sad. That bridge needs to be reconstructed sooner than later. And the other bridge that we're dealing with is the one on the Wooler Road by Murray Centennial School. Started at 7 or 8 million, and I think it's up close to 20 now to do that bridge. And again, we're not getting financial support.
Worship has a good point, but we could take that bridge that's there right now, cut it in two, we'd have our locks, just move it further down, put a new bridge in.
Good.
Solving all the world's problems on the Environmental Stewardship Committee. Okay, that's great. Can I get 2 for adjournment? Okay, Mr. Brown and Mr. Mayor, all in favor of that? Okay, there we are. It's approved. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.